Really, what we have now is corporations buying our government.
The lobbyists, the big corporations, the people who try to buy out Washington are the enemy. But a government that works of, by, and for the people isn't the enemy, and that's unfortunately what they've demonized.
We the people are being threatened by the corporate money and the corporate influence in our politics.
The billionaires, through Americans for Prosperity, stir up populist anger against big government, which is getting in the way of big business like Koch Industries.
We've spent a lot of time this year kind of exposing the Kochs, which, as you know, are these two billionaire brothers who fund literally a vast political network of candidates, of think tanks. They spend millions upon millions of dollars in politics to influence public policy in a way that helps their corporation's bottom line and at the same time is harmful to the American public. To give you a sense of how much money they spent lobbying in 2008, 2009, $32 million. They spent $1 million to repeal California's global warming law. They are the largest funders of climate change denial. They've spent $50 million.
This is the way that you control people in democratic societies. You basically spread enough lies out there that you don't let people get educated about what's happening to them.
They are lobbying for an anti-regulatory, pro-business agenda.
All this talk about the Koch brothers made me want to reach out to the Americans for Prosperity, and Alan Cobb, their Director of State Operations, was gracious enough to speak with us.
Yeah, and I do not consider myself an Ivy Leaguer. It's almost like a coincidence I happen to have a degree from an Ivy League institution. So, we are a free market grassroots public policy group, and we started about 7 years ago. And the reason is one of the big gaps on the right of center puzzle, the puzzles on the political side were really a lack of an organization that could get the regular public involved and educated on these issues.
It's been around, and has it always been funded by the Kochs from the very beginning, or other people?
Well, it's not just funded. I mean, we have 81,000 donors, so this notion that the Koch brothers do anything is just a fallacy. And I think it's a shortcut for those on the left who want to try to, I guess, minimize the depth and the levels of support that we have. And David Koch is our C3 chairman, so if the folks want to think that one entity is funding it, I guess they can think that.
The Foundation for Americans for Prosperity raised $39.6 million in 2010 according to their tax returns. How much of the funding comes from the Kochs, however, is uncertain because, thanks to Citizens United, large donors and the amount of their donations do not need to be revealed.
Well, then let's put that into perspective. Let's understand how limited government today is the solution.
Well, I pose it to, here's one way to look at it is let's look at Congress. You have 535 members of Congress. Why do we think they're equipped to make the decisions for us?
Okay, so I don't want Congress telling me how to live and what to do, and I bet you don't either. But when it comes to keeping our air and our water clean, or providing world-class education for our children, or having prudent leadership to do what's right for the American public interest, that's what our democracy was designed to do.
As a result of 2008, the disparity in wealth in this country has reached all-time highs. Is that a problem?
No, we've actually, the disparity in wealth has decreased in the last 5 years.
Maybe we have a difference of facts. But
there should rarely be difference of facts.
There should never be a difference of facts.
There should be maybe difference of interpretation. We have a government that's interjected themselves more and more into the private sector.
You don't think global warming is man-made, right?
Look, the carbon emissions in the U.S. are going down.
If that's the case, where does patriotism fit in?
Patriotism, good question. Patriotism, I think that probably fits in economic freedom and personal liberties. Is it patriotic to adhere to principles that might slow economic growth, which then makes our standards of living lower? Is that patriotic?
Slow economic growth for who? The Kochs have a $50 billion empire, and I'm barely keeping my head above water.
The middle class, if we have any stagnation, it's because of lack of economic growth. Do we have a large middle class?
Yeah, for like the last 25 years, compared to inflation, the numbers vet out that we haven't had growth in the middle class.
Yes, we have. One of those things is talk about household income. Our households are smaller. This is where you get into where maybe you can debate facts because we're not always talking about the same facts. I think we are one of the largest manufacturing countries in the world. Do we manufacture as many more opportunities generally than we've had in 20, 30 years ago?
And who's at fault for that?
I would say generally government, specifically federal government, over the last 10 years, But I think Obama's exacerbated things. Some of their solutions are, the Occupy Wall Street solutions are to have government provide these jobs and force corporations to pay. I think the other thing, disappointingly and sadly, some of them turn into anarchist thugs.
So give me the long-term plan. Tell me what the long-term plan is.
Continue to educate the public on the impacts of government on their lives and how a free market and economic freedom help everybody.
Truth be told, I found Alan to be a very likable guy. Now, while my ASU pedigree might not be as well regarded as his master's from Harvard, I know when someone's pissing on my head and telling me it's rain.
The way I see it, if you do something to knowingly endanger our economy, well, then you're endangering our nation. I mean, I don't know every person in Washington, every person in Congress, but I'm pretty sure that if you look up 99% of them, they're all tied into something somewhere. I mean, there's some great websites that'll show you exactly how much oil and gas money went to this guy. There are a few guys in Washington that, if you look at where their money comes from, it's not coming from these huge corporations.
You know, corporations actually began as a kind of extension of the state. So initially, these were institutions that were given charters by the state to do some project that was in the public good.
I've just had a close race for Congress. They've spent $500,000 on TV advertisements to support my candidacy. I'm now in Congress. You can make darn sure that I am going to cast votes that benefit them, that they are going to have, a lot of access and influence, and I am going to always be acutely aware and basically responding to their every need.
If you look at the demographics of our legislative body right now, there's 535 people there. There's less than 10% of them whose personal net worth or personal income fall into the category below the top 10%. Whose interests are they going to feed? Well, they're going to answer to the guys who write them the checks that get them reelected.
I think it's sort of paradoxical when we think of corporations now as these, entities that are fully opposed to the state and completely private. They have a history as quasi-public.
This country was founded on the principle of that we all have an equal voice, and we don't have an equal voice when individuals or corporations are buying members of Congress or the entire Congress to do their bidding.
I mean, that's a pretty significant development, I think, in the history of the corporation.
We're supposed to have the ability to replace somebody that isn't representing our interests. The approval rating for Congress is something like 14% right now. I'll bet you everything I own that 80% of our members of Congress get reelected next year. How does that make any sense?
Plutocracy is ruled by, of, and for the rich. Ruled by, of, and for the corporations. Corporatocracy, plutocracy. So we have a pro-democracy movement of a certain kind against the corruption of our political system by big money. That's what we are, that's what we're doing.
An economy run on financial markets is a very volatile economy.